want to invite you to take a breath with me. Deep into your belly. Blow your belly up like a balloon. Breathe all the way in. Breathe out. Welcome to Creative Mornings, Austin. It is an honor to be here today. This is my absolute favorite thing in the world to do. And I'm excited to share a message with you. So my goal for this 20 minutes is that you get a sense of how to turn anxiety into really exciting power. How does that sound? Cool. So how we're going to do that is I'm going to share a story with you about my personal experience of anxiety. Then we'll go into a little bit of the science of what's happening when we're feeling anxious and what's happening in the body and the mind. And then I'm going to take you through a 7-step framework to relieve anxiety within yourself anytime you want. Cool? Yeah. Cool. Okay. So you're all here today because you have this idea, this suspicion that you're amazing. You're an amazing, powerful creator. But something kind of gets in the way. How many people have felt anxious before? Cool. Everyone. So what makes us feel anxious? I asked this question yesterday on social media and I got so many answers. Math makes people anxious. Being late makes people anxious. Making presentations, parents make people anxious. So I want you to take a minute and think, what makes you anxious? And I want to see if you can come up with 5 things. And I want you to do this up in the air until you hit 5 for yourself. 5 things that make you anxious. Great, we've identified 5 things that make us anxious. What's the common denominator of those 5 things? There must be something. Lack of control, yeah. Fear. Other people. These are good answers.
You're the common denominator.
Yeah, that's right. The common denominator is you. Well, shit. That means you're responsible for this anxiety. And that probably feels shitty to find out. But there's actually a lot of power in taking that responsibility, because the things that make you anxious, you might be thinking like, I'm anxious because I want that raise, I didn't get it. After you get the raise, you're going to find something else to be anxious about. After you launch your book, oh, I'll finally have peace because I launched my book. You'll get anxious about sales. And then after you hit your first sales milestone, you'll get anxious about the second one. So all these different unknown things are going to keep happening in the external world, and the trick is creating a locus of control in your internal world. So that's what we're going to talk about today. What happens when you don't do that, every time you get anxious, is that you lose 1 hour of creativity a day. So for all the creatives, whatever, and everyone is a creative, like you said, 1 hour a day. Now, if you manage a team of people, that is the equivalent of losing 1 in 10 salaries a year on your team due to those anxious moments. Because when we get anxious, we freeze and we stop creating. It's a barrier to creating. So my offering to you is that in anxiety lies immense power. And when you feel anxious, instead of running away from it, treat it like a treasure map. Because you're getting a clue about an area that you can release, a pattern that's no longer serving you. And I'll tell you about how I figured that out. So I'm a creative entrepreneur. I'm creating things all the time. And most of us want to create big things, right? Being extraordinary means doing something extraordinary. And I started a wellness company. And if you've heard me speak before, I'm sure there's some people who have, you'll hear this story again. So I started a wellness company, and the idea was that we were bringing wellness seminars and services into other companies. So yoga classes, nutrition classes, meditation. Sounds like a great idea. And what happened was when I went to do sales, because I was the solopreneur, right, so I did everything, I met with human resources teams, and I would sit across from them and say, hey, we have these fabulous classes, and they would say, well, we're running a weight loss competition right now, so we're all set. And I found out that companies were playing Biggest Loser at work. And walking, into HR's room for a secret weigh-in. And it sounds kind of fun, but in reality, these companies are all calling each other fat. It's like you're telling your employees, you're not good enough. And that's a terrible message. Terrible. And to me, that's not what wellness was about. Well, there's something a little bit more. There's something when you wake up every day and you feel awesome. That's happening inside here and here that wasn't being acknowledged. And so after 99 of these meetings, I came back to my team and I said, we need a conference. And we're going to tell everybody that wellness is more than the number on the scale. We're going to broaden the definition of well-being to include what's in the head and what's in the heart, all of the other 90% of things that make people well. So big creator moment. And here's where anxiety got me. I didn't know how to start a conference. I had no idea how to do that. I've never done that before. How do you know how to do something you've never done before? It's impossible, because you haven't done it yet. So, anxiety tends to be rooted in these really simple ideas, these really simple coping mechanisms that we pick up when we're young. And they sound something like, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough. And I had those. We all have them. And I lived in it. I lived in my anxiety. Instead of being excited about creating this conference, I lived in fear for the next 6 months. When you're in anxiety, the first thing that is occurring is the thoughts in your mind are telling you you can't. They're making you shrink, they're making you smaller. And the science behind that is you're actually creating a kind of brainwave that's called beta brain. Has anyone ever heard of beta brainwaves before? Or also sometimes called monkey brain. When you're in beta brain, you're running in reactionary loops, and you actually can't be creative. So this is where anxiety becomes the blocker to creativity. So you're in beta brain mode. Beta brain looks like, I don't want to be late, or I don't know how to do this, or I can't, I shouldn't. Where you want to be is alpha brainwave state, which is a much more relaxed cadence of thought. And alpha brainwaves allow creativity, they allow peace. But anxiety, you're in beta brain. When you're in beta brain having those thoughts, the next physical reaction is your breath. So the reason I had you take a breath with me when we began was to bring you present and to get you out of beta brain. When you take a deep breath, you're immediately switching your brain from beta down to alpha. But when you're in beta, you're actually only breathing with 1/3 of your lung capacity. And we don't even realize we're doing it. I used to give myself migraine headaches, but I wasn't self-aware enough to say I give them to myself. I would get migraines because life's hard. I later realized it's because I'm not breathing when I'm stressed. So I'm walking around not being able to be creative, I'm not breathing. And then when your breath rate starts to do that, your heart rate starts to follow. And there's something called heart rate variability. I don't know if any of you have heard of that metric. It's designed by an institute called the Heart Math Institute, and it's one of the first metrics of stress of its kind. And you want your heart rate to look even and smooth. But when you're in anxiety, it starts to get raggedy. And those are indicators, that's where heart attacks come from. Living in this chronic stress state, your body is actually physiologically responding. And the interesting thing is, nothing's actually happening to you, right? Like, I had this huge fear that I didn't know how to create a conference, I'm not smart enough. My coping mechanism was isolation, so I didn't want to ask for help, because if I asked for help, then I was admitting that I wasn't smart. And then I wouldn't be the cool, awesome entrepreneur that I wanted everyone to think I was. So you end up in this sort of double down spiral. And where did I land? An anxiety attack. I think I'm very much a positive psychology believer, and I spread that message. But the reality for me is that I developed all of those thought processes because I learned how valuable they are by not having them. So I sat in that anxiety state for 6 months. 6 months of, I'm not good enough, I'm not good enough, I'm not good enough. Usually what people do when they start a big idea, when the second it gets scary, they quit. How many people have started something and not finished it? Because it started to get a little uncomfortable. Yeah. Except I announced this to the whole city. So I couldn't back down from it. And it was the night before the conference, going back to teams and creativity within teams, when you've got someone in a leadership position who's in a toxic state, it spreads. It just does. And my co-founder was picking up my toxic juice, my toxic stuff. And it was the night before this conference. And the reason I was so anxious about it, I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know how to sell the tickets. So the venue held 300 seats, and I was like, well, I have to sell 300 tickets. And we had only sold like 200, which there was an easy solve for that, which I'll tell you in a minute. But it's the night before the conference, and my co-founder calls me. So not only were we launching this conference to broaden the definition of well-being for the whole corporate wellness industry, but I was also relaunching my company and our brand and our website. It was, a big momentous thing. He called me and he said, I broke our website. I'm not coming to the conference. I've been up all night trying to fix it. I haven't slept at all. He was going to drive in from Houston. And he was also responsible for the internet and hotspotting everything. And I had an anxiety attack. All that panic, all that months of not breathing, my heart rate going crazy, my brain going crazy. When you don't hit a release valve on that, your body will do it for you. And I just cracked. And my team showed up at 6 in the morning. We were all going to go to the conference together, happy, and I had bags under my eyes. I was in my bathrobe. And I was like, just don't even ask me what happened. So we do the conference, and it was beautiful and amazing. And at the end of it, my team was like, let's go out for drinks. And I sank down on the floor and just started crying. And someone asked me if they were tears of joy. And I was like, yeah. And I was lying. I was in so much pain. And everyone went out for drinks, and I went home, and I got in bed, and I stayed there, and I kind of hid there. So has anyone had an anxiety attack before, or anything like that? You get, depleted. An anxiety attack, for me, it's like your body kind of, freaks out, like you've overcharged your cell phone, and the battery wants to explode. And at the end of it, to me, it's like I can't stop breathing really fast. I get pins and needles in my hands. I'm crying. So after that, and after laying in bed, after the conference, I remember I was sitting on my couch and I was thinking, there is something extremely fundamental about life that I must be missing here. Because I think I'm a powerful creator. I think I'm smart. And I'm trying so hard. What am I doing wrong? And across from me was my bookshelf, and on the bookshelf there was a book called The Power of Now. Someone had given it to me as a gift 3 years prior, and I got up to page 3 and it said, "You are not your thoughts." And I was like, that's crap. And I put it back on the bookshelf, and I didn't read it anymore. Well, for some reason at this moment, that book stuck out to me, like it's time to read this book. And I did, and it blew my mind. I realized what I was doing is something I now call futuring, where you create this fake future of failure, and then you live into it. Because the interesting thing is that the pictures you create in your head, your body thinks they're real no matter what they are, and it starts to react to it, and you just manifest whatever's going on out there. So if I'm picturing this empty conference, big failure moment, my body is like, oh, that's what's happening? Okay, let's freak out and get in survival mode. And in reality, all I was doing was sitting in my apartment refreshing my Eventbrite analytics. There's no tiger coming for me. There was no actual live conference failure moment. So we create these futures of a really scary failure, and then we live into them. Now the thing about anxiety, that bothers me is that we're not taught how to deal with it. So we think we have this idea that it's manipulating the external world will finally fix the internal world, right? Like waiting for that raise or hitting that sales milestone. But it's not true, it's all internal. And we're not taught this in school. We're not taught how to handle stress. We're taught history and math, which apparently is anxiety-inducing in itself. So I think it's important that we start to educate ourselves now. Because you're always going to be the common denominator in any environment that you're in. And so the question is, how do you start to take responsibility and create a center of powerful control where you recognize that in that anxious moment is something not serving you anymore and you can switch out of it? So my program was, I'm not smart enough. I'm not smart enough to figure this conference out, and I can't have people know that. I learned that when I was like 3. One of my parents called me stupid. And I remembered that. I wasn't fast enough. I didn't figure it out fast enough. And so I spent most of my life trying to be as smart and fast at everything as possible. But that coping mechanism doesn't serve me anymore. See, what happens when you have a traumatic moment as a kid is your body snaps into survival mode, and you're so fresh and pure when that happens that it creates a really deep groove, like an actual neural pathway in your body, and your body learns, oh, that's how we survive. Got it. And everyone picks up their own survival mechanism. So for me, it was try and be as smart as possible and then hide. Because if I hide, they can't see me, they can't know I don't know. And I picked that up as my coping mechanism. And these coping mechanisms that we learn throughout life become our operating system. And it's actually how we end up showing up everywhere in the world. So anytime I started to feel not smart, I would hide, even though no one's coming for me, like there's no parent anymore. And these operating systems become outdated. So now we're 30-year-olds, we're 20-year-olds, and we're walking around trying to create conferences and write books and give talks, and we're operating on 3-year-old operating systems. But there's a cool thing that I learned, which is that these operating systems can be upgraded. We're actually like computers. Like, you know how computers run on zeros and ones? We're projecting our programs out on everything, but you can upgrade your software, like plug in overnight, like your iPhone upgrade. And I'm going to teach you how to do some of that. So are you guys ready to join me in some techniques that I learned for anxiety relief? Okay. So there's 7 steps. It's going to look like 3 steps, a little wiggle, and then 3 steps. So step 1 is the breath, is taking a breath. So what I did with you, where I told you to blow up a balloon down here, is called diaphragmatic breathing. Most of us are really walking around using 1/3 of our lung capacity and suffocating ourselves all day. And when you're in that, remember, that correlates to beta brain. So you actually can't be creative. You can't get out of your own loop. When you do a diaphragmatic breath, you switch it. The brain can't stay in beta. It has to go to alpha. So the way to think about diaphragmatic breathing, there's a count. I like the count 5, 7, 2. So I'm going to count for you, and you're going to try it. And when you try it, don't suck in. This is not about looking good. It's about really expanding and recognizing that your breath has the ability to go all the way down here. So I'm going to count 5, and you're going to breathe in. And then I'm going to count 7, you're going to breathe out. And then I'm going to count 2, and you're going to hold it on the out, on 2. And the reason you're doing that is because we're switching between your parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous systems. Your sympathetic is happening when you're breathing in, and that's actually more fight or flight, and parasympathetic is relaxed and peaceful, and that's on the out. So we breathe out longer, and then we hold it on the out because you're staying in this healing vibe. You ready to breathe? Okay, in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Hold. 1, 2. How did that feel? Calming. Cool. Ben, I'm actually going to ask you to be a volunteer for me. So that's the first step. Step 1 is taking that breath. Whenever you're anxious, you now know that you have that tool at your disposal at any moment. It's free, and it's fast. The next thing you have is a minute. This is called a slow minute. So I'm going to ask you to start a timer for me on your phone for 1 minute. And I'm going to ask you guys in that 1 minute to close your eyes and do the diaphragmatic breathing for the whole minute. I want you to notice how long that minute actually feels and how relaxed you're actually getting in that moment. Does that feel okay? You ready? Okay, everyone close your eyes. Diaphragmatic breathing on 3, 2, 1. I'll tell you when to stop. Time. Didn't that feel surprisingly long? Can you believe that? How calm do you feel? 1 minute. 1 minute to step out of any anxiety that you're feeling in any moment. We all have a minute, a slow minute. These are going to be your new go-tos every time life gets really uncomfortable, which remember is going to be all the time, because you're always going to be trying to create something you've never done before. It's the nature of humanity. You just haven't had the tools to cope with it. So the slow minute, I love the slow minute. Step 3 after the slow minute is to welcome in your anxious thoughts very calmly. Most of us push them away. When you push them away, you do what I did, where I did 6 months of ignoring them and then exploded. I did have physical damage in my body. I created an ulcer. My stomach was burning all the time. It was terrible. Like those inflammatory responses are extremely real. So you're in this calm state. You've just done your slow minute. Now really think, what's up for me? And instead of pushing them away, welcome them in. Oh, hi, fear. What's up? It's okay that you're scared. What's up? It's nice to meet you. Oh, hi, I'm not smart enough. Nice to know you're there. You have to acknowledge it. The Martin Luther King quote, you can't fight darkness with darkness, only light can do that, or I'm butchering that. You have to shine a light on what you're hiding, is what I'm getting at. You have to welcome those thoughts. Now really feel into it. Find that one thing for you. What's that one thing that makes you really anxious? And make it present, like feel that in your body. Feel what you're anxious about. Can you feel it? It should feel kind of like emotional dynamite. Like it should have like this kind of feeling to it. So step 3, you're welcoming it, and you'll know that you've welcomed it well when you feel the dynamite in your body. You feel the anxiety hit inside. Now we get to the wiggle part. So emotion, and the Latin root of it is to move. Emotion's a huge energy surge happening in your body that wants to do something. The interesting thing is anxiety and excitement come from the same place in the brain. It's just the lens through which you're looking at it. So we've got this huge jolt of energy, and it's coming from an anxious place, so we're full of fear. And typically when this happens, we're sitting in front of our computer, freaking out. And where's the energy going? Nowhere. We're still sitting. So that's real. And I've worked in wellness long enough that I've learned a lot of techniques from a lot of different amazing healers. And that energy actually wants to get out of your body. So we're gonna do 2 techniques to get it out. I mean, there's really obvious ones. Go for a run, go dance. But sometimes you're at work and you can't do that. The first is called tapping. Tapping is literally tapping on your body along energy meridians that are the same energy meridians that acupuncturists use when they're releasing stress from you. Except you're not going to use needles, you're just going to use your fingers. So start by feeling into your collarbone area for there should be some sore spots around here. Rub into those, and then start doing this. Remember, keep that dynamite feeling. You are anxious as fuck right now. It's real. There's a bear chasing you. You're on stage. It's not going well. Your boss is about to fire you. This is horrible. I hate this moment. Why am I not smart enough? Go from here, and now bring it down here under your ribs and tap there. Oh, I'm not smart enough. Why am I not smart enough? Feel it. Now tap here, like as if you were where you wear a bra, on both sides. Or pretend, you know. And then up the top of the head, tap here. Ah! I wish I was smarter. I wish I was faster. I wish I was making more sales. And then bring it back here. So what you're doing is you're releasing this really stuck energy current of these old coping mechanisms that you learned when you were 3 that you don't need that shit anymore. So let it out. Tapping is fabulous for that. Okay, that's wiggle technique 1. Wiggle technique 2 is actually wiggling. This is my roommate, Peter. Say hi to Peter. The other day, Peter had a friend over, and this friend happened to be a healer, and he showed us another technique for releasing that feeling. And it's actually wiggling, so I'm gonna do it with you. So in your seat, feel into like your pelvis, and start doing a really light, and keep going, like get weird. Like what happens if you loosen up even more? Doesn't that feel kind of good? Like something good's happening, right? Cool. So these are real techniques. These are real. If you Google like instinctual animal techniques for stress relief, there's a really popular set of videos of polar bears who get really stressed out and then wiggle. They wiggle like crazy. And it's a natural stress relief mechanism, but we forgot them as humans. We just kind of forgot. Because we're in a very strict, rigid society where you have to look cool and good all the time, so you can't like wiggle at your desk. It's weird. But it's actually really helpful. So now you've released that energy. We got into dynamite, it felt like shit, and then we said on the dynamite and we tapped it out, we got the energy out. Now you've created room for something new. So imagine you're a circuit breaker, and you've just opened up the circuits and they're like live and they're ready to receive. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna replace that anxious feeling with love. And it's you loving yourself. You have more love for yourself than anyone ever will. And so often we're looking for love on the outside, but it's inside. So right after you feel that release, you've tapped it out, you get the energy out, and you'll feel that sensation like something's moving. Then repeat after me. I deeply and completely love and accept myself. Your turn. Oh, yeah. Feel it like wash over you. I love me. I love me. And here's a trick. Love the part of you that doesn't love you. Right? So the part of me that doesn't think I'm smart enough, I love her because she actually just wants me to be the best me I can be. She's hating on me because she wants the best for me. I love her too. Thank you for hating me, hater. I love you. I love that you want the best for me. So I know this sounds silly, but think about how you calm a child when they fall. You pick them up, you tap on them, and you tell them everything's okay. We can do that for ourselves. That's exactly what we're doing. And there's neurological science that proves that this works. Okay, so now we've loved ourselves. So now we're in this like ooey gooey phase. And this is the best part. You relieve the stress. We've done it. We're on the other side of anxiety, but let's not stop there. Let's transition that into power. So now you've got like blank canvas. And I want to teach you a trick that I call opportunity flipping, also known as conscious languaging. So whatever you were scared of, like I was scared of selling tickets, like, I have to sell all these tickets and I don't know how. I can flip that into an opportunity. I get to learn how to sell tickets. Cool. So it's not about my limit, it's about opening up a whole new pathway to explore. Another example that everyone seems to be anxious about being late. What happens when you're late? You usually run around your house in the morning saying, I don't want to be late, I don't want to be late, I'm going to be late. And the mind, here's another fun fact, it can't tell that, it doesn't understand negatives. So if you're saying I don't want to be late, all it's hearing is I'm late, I'm late, I'm late. So a trick for that is, I can't wait to be on time. See how I flipped it? And every time I do that for myself, I'm on time. It's crazy. So think about what is it that you're nervous about. One time I gave this talk and a woman said it was her divorce, and she was so anxious about, I have to fill out all these papers, and I was like, you get to orchestrate the paperwork that sets you free. Isn't that fabulous? So I see some of you with pens and paper. Take a shot at writing something down that flips whatever you're anxious about into an opportunity. I get to learn from sales masters about how to hit my milestones. I get to explore public speaking and see what those techniques are. Flip it into an opportunity. And you'll know that you haven't done it if the words have to, should, or need to are still there. You want things like, I get to, I'm excited about, I have the opportunity to. And it's the same pathway, you're just flipping out of anxiety into excitement. It's just a little mind trick, and it's so powerful. Now we're on the last step. The last step is creating a beautiful future for yourself. One of the superpowers of human beings and why you're all here is that we are creators. We're always building, and we build what we see. We manifest things out of thin air. This green carpet and brown couch are here because someone thought those were good colors that go together. It's all created. Someone had to think of it, and here it is. And you have that same superpower. So if you can now imagine a beautiful future, that's what you'll live into. Your body will follow the signals. You'll be more open to asking the questions. But instead of only thinking about the end result, so going back to that divorce example, she's imagining that it's going to be terrible. Think about the actual act of creating being awesome. So if I was anxious about this talk, which I was, and it was a beautiful self-study, I'm getting anxious about the actual moment of the talk. But 99% of what makes this possible is the act of the whole practice leading up to it. And so in addition to envisioning a beautiful future for yourself, take some time to envision the act of getting to that future and make that feel really good. So whatever, let's say you have a big presentation coming up for your boss or for an account. Imagine that going really well in the moment. Also imagine how much fun you're going to have creating that leading up to it. Because those moments that we're scared of are just that, they're moments. That 1 hour will be gone, but the 6 months you spent leading up to that hour, that was actually the majority of your life. So if you make the act of creating leading up to whatever the thing is really fun and beautiful, you've done it. You've succeeded. So, the thesis. Anxiety is actually hidden power, where you are finding on this treasure map opportunities to get rid of these old programs that aren't serving, these old coping mechanisms that aren't serving. Release them and build a whole new bridge to something beautiful. And that's it. Thank you guys.